how to never run out of content ideas ever again. If you could draw like a funnel, and at the top of the funnel, you would have ideas that come in, and I'm gonna talk about where to get those ideas. And then you would have it funnel down to quality content ready to be posted. That's really what we're going to talk about today. How do you get the ideas, and then how do you funnel them down to create actual good quality content that you can post in the social media feeds, channels, wherever it's going. So let me tackle the first one, which is just where do you get the content ideas? Okay, so I think it's impossible to run out of content ideas, honestly. If you're listening and you've got a good process and system down, you should always have content ideas coming in, and then you should know how to take those and transform those into actual content. And we're going to break this down. So first of all, where did the content ideas come from? There's a ton of different places they could come from. I'm gonna give you guys some actionable and tactical things here that you guys can take away. So the first place is customers. Like, I'll give you an example. I was just on a call earlier today with a customer who's like, Alex, I have all this long form video content. I don't know what the hell to do with it. I know there's some good quality content in there. I know the topics, the subjects, what we're talking about is good stuff. I just got literally hours worth of video content, and I don't know how to take this and turn it into something that can be produced and turned into content that can be posted on the social media feeds. Like, how do I take that and convert it to customers, right? And so as we were working through this process, they got a social media manager that is from us and a video editor that we assigned to them. We started working through this process and built out sort of a workflow for them to be able to take the raw video files that they have already in their system and break them down into one long form YouTube video with a thumbnail, potentially go to the podcast, and then break down a few different micro clips in every single macro video. So as we're breaking this down, I'm like, this is such a great topic because I've gotten that question before, and I know there's a ton of people out there, and perhaps even some of you guys listening right now, where you're like, yeah, that's me. I have a lot of long form video content that I just really don't do anything with, or I'm not sure what to do with. And sometimes, honestly, it can just be overwhelming, and you're sitting on hours worth of video and you're like, I don't even know where to start, right? And so I'm like, this is a great topic. Let me just take that topic that I'm already working with from a customer standpoint, and I'm going to turn this into a video. Or I could turn this into an entire podcast episode, an entire live session. I could just title the freaking episode, What to Do with Your Long Form Video Content Files. And that's an entire episode. That's one example of a trillion that where I'm just listening to my customers, and after I get off a call, I'm like, well, that's easily 2 to 3 good topics right there. Okay, the other one is prospects. I was on a call earlier today with someone that I think will sign up with us the end of this week. And we talked about just content strategy in general. Where do you start? What types of videos should you start producing first? Where should they go? How should they look? How long should they be? I got at least 4 to 5 ideas just from that alone. If you're running out of ideas and you're like, I just can't think of anything, I talk to my customers and prospects, still nothing's hitting me, go to other content creators in your space, in your industry, in your niche. And don't copy the content, obviously. You don't want to rip off someone's content. But you can go there and just get topics and ideas and subjects, and then you've probably got your own perspective that you can take and put on it. And that becomes either a video or a text post or a picture post or a blog or whatever it is, right? I see content all the time in the feed where I'm like, oh, that's an interesting topic. My take is different on that. Like, I have a different spin on that, but yeah, I'll definitely run with that topic next week or the week after, right? Your own content you need to be pulling from, right? So I talked about this a lot recently where like you need to be looking at the last 10 top performing pieces of content that you've put out there and say, how do I remix? If these did so well, why did they perform so well? Like, analyze the data, look at it. Was it the hook? Was it the message? Was it both? Was it the length of it? Was it whatever it was, right? There's something about that content that resonated. We've done this a lot over the last couple months where this one hook worked really well, and then I did it like 4 or 5 times. And I just tweaked the messaging, but I kept kind of the hook the same, and I changed the environment, or maybe I played with the hook a little bit and then kept the message more the same. Like, just going back through your own content. If you've posted content already, at least 20 to 30 to 50 posts, I guarantee you could go back through the last 50 and you could pull a few pieces of content just from that. Okay. I would also say just as important, if not more important, is going through the comment section of your own content, sure. But if you're not getting a lot of engagement with your content, then again, go to other content creators in your industry. And one of the best things you can do is go to the bigger creators in your space and look through the comments, because chances are they're not getting back to everyone in the comments, meaning they're not responding to every question, every thought. Like, there's just not enough time in the day. So you can go through then and just see what people are saying. If they're talking about a topic that would be relevant to you and your audience and your customers, one, take that topic and run with it. But then two, go respond or go look at the responses in the comments and say, what are people saying? How are they reacting? What are some of the questions that they're asking that creator isn't able to get to? Or maybe they did, but I have a different or unique perspective on there, and take that and use that as content, okay? Those are like the pillars. That's where I get 99% of my content. That's the topics, the ideas, that's what to talk about. And then you put your own kind of creativity and perspective on top of it, right? That's the creative element to it. The other ideas or the other kind of areas that I may get topics from, but not a ton, would be community, events, things like that. Reading, which I'm not, I really don't read books, but occasionally listen to a podcast or watching a YouTube video or just consuming content from other areas. Sometimes I get creative ideas from watching a show, right? Or watching a movie, like a content idea for a creative video will hit me with that. So again, ton of ways to get the ideas. Here's the most important part of this whole process is that you've got a kind of a system to log these ideas into what I call the idea content bank or content idea bank. Okay. And for me, that's just my notes app and that's my voice notes. So literally after I get done a call, sometimes while I'm on the call, I'm like typing out the ideas and topics that I have. If you don't do that, you're going to go a couple days later and you're like, shit, I had a couple of good topics. I can't remember what it was though. Right. So just make it easy on yourself. And the notes app, I think, is a content creator's best friend is the notes app. Like I don't know how I'd survive without that thing. Every time I get an idea, boom, it's in the notes app. And it could be just a topic or a subject for a piece of content. It could be I start to write out a piece of content, whether that's text or like a couple bullet points for a video. It could be me putting in my next couple live event topics because somebody asked something that was really good. I'm like, ooh, that's a podcast episode. So leverage your notes app to stay organized with your ideas, your ideation. And then the voice notes for me are great when I'm driving, when I'm on the go, when I've got a longer idea that I just want to get out and I don't feel like typing it all. I'll do a quick voice note and then save it for later and then go back and turn it into the notes app. All right. So that's step one. Here's something, step two is like the content ideation graph. And this is going a little bit more tactical, but I'm going to give you guys some things that you can actually use because I think we get to a point now where it's like people are like, all right, I got it. I got ideas. They're coming from my customers, prospects, other creators. Cool. Like I said, it's almost impossible to run out of out of content ideas. But then the next struggle or challenge that people have is how do I take an idea or a concept or a subject and how do I start turning that into a piece of content that's actually going to perform? And so one way to do this is using that content ideation graph. And so here's what I want you to do. And if you're listening or watching this live, I'd suggest that you write this down. It's a line graph, right? So we got a horizontal line and then we got a vertical line. At the top one, at the horizontal line at the top, I want you to write down category 1, category 2, category 3. And that's going to be what you're like the actual niche topic of what you're going to talk about. So you may have one core niche or industry, but typically you're going to talk about a few different things. And it doesn't mean you can't veer off from these 3 topics. I'm not saying just talk about these and that's all you're ever going to talk about, but these are going to be like your pillar topics. Okay. So, or your pillar categories, I should say. And so for me, it could be content creation strategy, video creation, LinkedIn marketing. Right? Like those could be my 3 kind of categories. On the left-hand side, going down vertically now, so that was horizontally, now we're going vertically. Now I want you to write out the different kind of topics or ideas around those categories. So for example, first one you could put up there was debunk a myth. So now I'm going to go through each category or each category. And I'm going to say, all right, so for content creation, what's one myth or something that people get wrong about content creation? Here's the one thing that people just totally get wrong about creating their content strategy. Then I'm going to go to video content. And I'm going to talk about a myth or debunk something that most people think is true, but it's just not, right? You don't need call to actions in your every video that you make. That would be one right there, right? People are going to go, you don't? It's like, no, right? Let the content speak for itself. And then I would go to LinkedIn. Here's what people don't understand about LinkedIn, or LinkedIn has changed. This is one thing people need to know about it, right? And then I would go into that. Then I would just keep going down that topic line. I'll probably insert them in the YouTube video or in the podcast. I've got like 25 or 30 of these. So if you take that 25 and you times it by the 3 topics, you've now got 75 videos or pieces of content ready to create. A couple other of the topics on the left-hand side could be customer success story, personal journey story, problem and a solution, meaning that I would state something like, if you're struggling to convert your video content into customers, here's what you need to do, right? If you're struggling to do X, Y, and Z, if this is your problem, here's what you need to do about it, okay? Ton of things that we can list on that left-hand side. The reason I like this is because it's more tactical. It's more like you can get your hands around this now, right? Because if you're like, oh, just get some ideas from customers, and it's like, cool, but like, how do I start converting that into content? Well, this is it. And it kind of gives you the hook by the nature of lining up those topics. And you know it's in line with your brand and your business because it's fitting in those core categories. All right. So I hope that was helpful. The third and final step is just you need a process to convert ideas about content or content ideas into actual content. Okay, so we're getting there. We've got the ideas for the content. We're starting to organize them, notes app, voice note. And now we're even starting to piece them together by category, by topic, kind of got some hooks going. That's great. But now we need a process to turn content ideas into actual content. That's going to perform in the feeds. That's actually going to do well. And here's what I do. I'll just give you my blueprint, okay? I kind of bucket it into 4 different categories: create, curate, post-produce, and then post, schedule or post. So the first one's create. So what I do is I block out, there's 2 time blocks that I have every single week that really don't move. One of them is this now, right? So I'm doing a live session, turns to podcast, YouTube, micro clips, all that stuff. So that's one. That's a half an hour, 45 minutes. Sometimes we go a little bit longer. I just block out an hour. It's time, it's dedicated towards that. Okay, my prep work, I may spend 20, 30 minutes writing out the outline, preparing, stuff like that. But you know your stuff if you're doing something on something that you're an expert in, right? So that's the create part. Then there's the curate part. Oh, actually, the other create part is I block out an hour every Wednesday, kind of like my production morning or afternoon. And I just sit and batch record like 6 to 8, sometimes 10 videos at a time. Okay, so sometimes there's more clips that maybe I wanted to get from the live session that I didn't. Maybe there's a couple topics that I just want to create something from scratch because I want to say it a certain way, or I want to add a certain hook, or I'm remixing a top performing video that I did before, or maybe I'm creating an edutainment kind of skit video. That's what I'm going to do on Wednesdays. So you're talking about total content creation time that I spend every week is 2 hours, right, of actually recording videos. And when I tell people that, sometimes they're shocked by that because they're like, I feel like you're making videos all the time because you have so many videos that hit the feeds. And I'm like, that's just because I've just blocked out time at strategic points in the week. And so I can create good amounts of content and then separate it out from other business activities. Because, I've got a team of 15 people and we've got customers that I'm very involved with. And so I'm not sitting around creating videos all day. Like I wouldn't be able to scale my business. There's no way. I'm also not editing my own videos because again, I did that very early on and I wouldn't be able to scale my business. So that's the create part. So if you can block out 2 hours a week and you can get 10, 15 clips, whatever it is, long form, short form, to me, how is that not worth it? Like, how is that not an ROI? You're getting 2 hours and you're getting, 15, 20 pieces of content, potentially, definitely tens of thousands of views, but potentially hundreds of thousands of views. And inbound leads, brand building, customers, that kind of stuff. Like, it's just a no-brainer. And honestly, I could go in anyone's schedule right now and I could find easily a half an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours out of a week's period of time that you're not ultra locked in and lasered in and focused, and that time's not being spent to the highest production it could possibly be spent. It's not being spent in the highest ROI percentage, okay? The second piece is the curation. So now you've got the live session like this, you've got to break this down, right? So you've got to either timestamp it or maybe you've got a social media manager that's going to go through and just break up the clips and get them into the post-production or editing, which is the third category, post-production editing. I outsource, I delegate that. Again, I don't want to do it myself. I'm not a professional editor. I don't want to waste the time doing it. I'd rather spend my time with customers or doing other activities with my team, things like that. I do write my own copy though. So I do that portion and I time block that as well. That's another activity on Wednesday. So I'd piece that in with, I'm creating the videos for an hour and then I'm sitting down for 30 to 40 minutes and I just write my copy for all of next week. So I'm doing that tomorrow where I'll sit down, I'll schedule the post in scenely.io. I'll write the copy, give myself 30 to 45 minutes. That's all I give myself. I don't go past that. Like, you got to do all 5 posts in that amount of time or you're done. Otherwise you end up overthinking it. And then the last phase is just posting the actual content. So let's get into Q&A now, and then I'll go over next week's session, which is going to be the creator economy and how it's going to affect all of our businesses.
All right, you must be Canadian too. That's very, very kind of you. Alex, when you started out, I know that now you've got someone doing your post editing and production stuff. Did you start out doing that all on your own?
Yes.
How long did it take you at that point? What was that like for you?
So my story is like I was working a full-time job, single dad of 2 daughters, and then I was also creating content and editing all the videos myself and doing 100% of the post-production. And so I was able to do it to a certain point, like where I was making money and, selling my services and products and that kind of stuff. But I was editing and spending time like 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock at night. I mean, I was spending an ungodly amount of time. I have a very obsessive personality. So for me, like if I wasn't with my kids, I was working every weekend. There was a period of time where I had 1 day off in 6 months, like full day off, no work at all. Like I was like in it. And I just loved it too. I also really enjoyed it. It wasn't like, oh, I'm like dragging myself to do this stuff. Like I got into it, man, because Tyler, I was making the edutainment videos. That's what I started making. I don't know how long you've been following me, but if you go back 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, 2 years ago, all I was doing was edutainment videos. So they were really creative and they took like a different style of editing. And for me, I wanted to learn it. But then again, I got to a point, man, where it was taking, probably 10, 15, 20 hours a week at least editing videos. And I was like, I can't do this. I was like, I'm not going to grow my business. There's no way. So I hired somebody and screened somebody out and trained with them and worked with them for like 3 months. And I'll be honest, when I first hired a video editor, I got the video back from this guy. And I was like, no way. I'm not outsourcing this. I was literally so disappointed with the quality, and I'd found him on Upwork, and I went through a couple people and stuff, and I was like, I just can't find good people. And I got the video back, and I was like, I'm not doing this. And then I was like, you know what? Let me just give him. I was like, I can't go back to editing the videos myself. I just was not going to go down that road. So I was like, let me give him a couple more tries, and like maybe they won't be as good as editing as I was going to do it myself, but at least I'll have that time taken away. And long story short, I worked with him for the next few months. At the end of it, he became such a great editor. Like, I mean, he was my best person. And then we started building a team, and we realized that other people need editors too, that are trained, ready to go. They don't got to go through all this bullshit to find somebody, train them, spend all this time with them. And that was kind of like one part of my skill set was I knew how to like creatively edit videos, even though I'm not a pro. I could teach that to people, and then we just built trainings and systems around it to be able to scale it. But that's a long answer for a quick question of, yeah, I did all this stuff myself in the beginning. Because I think you either got time or money, right? And so it's like, what are you going to leverage, right? There's certain people who are like, I can't afford an editor. And it's like, then fucking do it yourself. Like, I mean, that's what I did. Like, and it's like, if you can afford editing, like I know a lot of companies that are multi-million and multi-billion dollars are like, oh, we don't want to pay for that. It's like, that's a drop in a bucket. Like for what you're going to get in terms of building a brand and winning customers, like how would you not? I spend that. People are like, sometimes I'm like, what do you think? I run a $1 billion company or something? Like I'm not making like millions of dollars every quarter. It's like, I just spend money on shit that I know is going to grow the business. If I make more money, I put it back into content. Like I'll build shit and like hire more people. It's like, I just think it's the greatest investment that you can make in 2022 and beyond is building a brand through content. I think specifically through video content. I think as it plays out the next 3 to 5 years, people are going to be like, oh shit, that was true.
Yeah, I was going to I know you're so far advanced in being in front of a camera and stuff, and I know a lot of us, it's relatively new. So some of the things that I used to do that I stopped doing that's saving me so much time is I'd stand there, I'd start pitching, doing whatever. It was terrible. I'd go back and shut the camera off, and then I'd go back, just let it roll. I would end up with 30 clips, and it'd be a little piece from here. And it was such a nightmare trying to figure out which clip was the best. So now I just let it roll no matter how frustrated I get. And also the skit videos are I find easier than the ones where I have to stand and stare in front of the camera. Because skits, I don't have to look in the camera. I right here and read it and then do it that way. So even though they seem harder, sometimes they're a lot easier because you could literally be reading the script. You don't look like a robot. Than when I'm just standing in front of the camera and freezing over and over and over again. So those things that seem harder are actually, I don't mind the skit videos because it's so much easier for me.
Mike, so 2 really great points that I just want to like expand upon a little bit. One of them is not letting perfection getting in the way of progress. So like a lot of people could be putting out more video content right now, but they're not because they cripple themselves by perfection. And it's like one of the reasons that I'm able to put out a lot of video content consistently is, yeah, I do have the processes and systems and the team now, but a lot of people can do that too, and they're not. One of the reasons I can do it is because I just don't care as much about perfection. Like I don't even check if my captions are spelled right. Like I literally don't give a shit. Like if you're like, oh, you got a caption spelled, I'm like, I don't care. I'm putting out a trillion video content like every year. Like it doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. Like no one's ever gonna be like, well, I was gonna buy from you, but technically you spelled there and THEIR instead of THER. Like it just like I don't want shit wrong with like all over the place. I don't want it to look like garbage, obviously. Like I do take pride in our content and our work, but people overthink shit. And we also fall into this place where like we're experts in our space, because I fall into this too. And sometimes we feel like, everyone kind of knows this, right? Like this is kind of just like, this is everyday stuff that people just would already know. I don't even need to talk about this, right? And so we don't think our stuff's valuable because we live it every single day and we're obsessed with it. So we don't see it the way that a new person coming in would go, wow, that's really amazing. I always say it's funny how you could scroll the feed and you could hear somebody deliver the exact same message that you just delivered. But because if it's a different person and it's just not you, you could see it and go, that's a great point. But then if like you would have created that exact same piece of content or video, you'd have been like, yeah, everyone knows that. It's not really that valuable, right? So I think we're just overly critical and harsh on ourselves for sure. And it stems from a lot of different things, whether it's insecurities or how we're brought up or our beliefs about ourselves, our self-worth, self-love. Like it's a lot of the deep rooted things. But I think your ability to get past that and say, hey, this is not about one video. This is not about 2 weeks or 2 months worth of video content. I mean, I look back and I've been creating videos now consistently for almost 3 years. And I've gotten more volume over the last year for sure. And it's like, I'm just getting started. I'm just barely have dipped my feet in the water. So it's like, I just, I just would never overanalyze 1 week or 2 weeks or a couple videos. I just get out there and let it fly. And I look back on my videos and of course I'm hard on my video. I'm like, that wasn't that good. But if it's good enough and it's got some, if I feel like it has value for my audience and my potential customers, then I'm going to get it out there. Right. So you got to make a lot of bad videos. The second piece, Mike, I'll say that I loved your point about the edutainment videos are actually easier to create than the traditional videos where you're just looking in the camera and reciting off a message. And I believe that 100% is true. I think most people would think it's the opposite because they'd be intimidated to try to like act or like, do something kind of creative on camera. But to your point, Mike, I think it's because you can get out of yourself a little bit. I think it's because like we're not comfortable sometimes with our own stuff, our own message. And we feel like when we can act or be somebody else, we're kind of coming out of our own skin. And it's easier to play a role because it doesn't feel like it's us, right? Like we're just like acting out some lines. And so I think I would encourage everyone. I think everyone should try. We talked about edutainment last week. So go back and listen or watch that episode if you missed it. But I broke down some really cool stuff on how to actually do it, the tactical stuff too. I would encourage everyone to try edutainment. I think it's more doable for more people than they even realize.
One of the things I like most about what Alex does is that he practices what he preaches.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, I was really busy today. I'm like, and I missed the last two. I'm like, I really want to get on there, but what's the topic? Is it going to be worth it? And so I looked at last week's email. I'm like, but he kind of already did that already. And so, but I was like, well, let me give him the benefit of the doubt. I can fit in some time. And literally, he hit the ball out of the park on a couple of different ways here. Number one, even though the topic was similar, it wasn't the same. And so he proved his point here in the content graph and how many different iterations you can come up with that are unique and valuable. Even if it sounds like it's the same, it's not. And you can put a little bit of a spin on it. And so I definitely hit that as a big thing. He told us about his process and how, it's difficult to take the time and to do all the stuff, but he did it anyway. And then he was gonna give up on his video editor, but then he didn't, and he pushed through, and he impacted another person's life for the better for the rest of their life. And I love that story. I mean, I love that story. I mean, that in itself could be a topic, right?
Yeah.
And then, there are a couple other things that now have escaped my mind. But man, every time I come and visit on one of these, I take something away. And I'm so thankful for you, Alex, that you are generous. You're generous with your time. You're generous with your knowledge. And it's something I think that all of us can take away and duplicate in our own way. So thank you.
Dude, I appreciate that. Wow. That means a ton to me, man. That's really nice. That's some kind words. I appreciate that.
I got a question about I do each week I do about an hour, set an hour like you do. The problem is I get the 4 videos out and sometimes I'm shooting way past an hour. I'm like, shit, wait a second, I don't need 2, and I took a bunch of takes because I'll say something and it won't come out right. And I'm not trying to be a perfectionist or anything. It just happens to go over an hour and it screws up my rest of my day because I have other things obviously I have to do just like everyone else. But I definitely make the time. I think it's just, that's why I can't get 8, I get 4. And that's, I find that, I don't know how you get, 8 in an hour. Maybe just, you have the reps in and it's just a little bit easier for you, but.
Yeah, I mean, I'll try and remember all the stuff that I want to follow up on. But the one thing I'll say with you, Andrew, is that in terms of how can I create more videos in a shorter period of time, is definitely putting in the reps and building the skills. Like I used to, post back in the day 3 videos a week on LinkedIn, and I feel like it took me like all week, and I was like on the weekend rushing to get my Monday video out, right? And now it's like I wouldn't even never worry about content for this coming week. Like I would never be like, oh, when am I going to post Friday? Like that shit's already scheduled. Like I'm thinking about a week and a half, 2 weeks out. So you build skills when you're a content creator, the more you create, just like anything. We forget that it's just like anything else. Like it literally is, right? You would never go on the basketball court and be like, oh, I've been shooting for a couple months. Like I'm not like MJ. It's like, yeah, of course. Like you're like 2 months in, you've got like, so it's like, sometimes we need to hear that though. It feels good. It's like, yeah, I guess I got to remember that, right? So Andrew, if you can get 4 videos in, half an hour to an hour, and they're good quality videos, and yours are performing extremely well. If you're not following Andrew, go check him out. His videos are crushing. And he's got a great message. Like, to me, that's progress. That's probably more than I was able to do if I flash back 3 years ago. So, I think it does. You're able to break things and synthesize things down. Like I was talking about that last week with the edutainment videos. You're able just to come in when you've done it enough and be like, all right, here's what the hook's going to be. Here's what the message is going to be. Like, let's go. And it doesn't mean I don't fumble through stuff and fuck up. Like, of course I do. Like all the time, right? But you're able to like break it down in a shorter period of time and be more efficient and be better at your job. And I think it's a really important skill set. I know some people are like, well, I don't sell video content services. And I'm like, what the hell does that have to do with anything? Like if you sell anything, like there's been so much talk the last couple of years about how you're a content creation production company first, then you sell stuff. Like I think, and Gary Vee and a lot of other people have said that too. That's really true. And I think we'll see that play out even more so the next 2, 3, 5 years when more and more companies start jumping on the content bandwagon, because the last couple of years have kind of been like, whoa, it's COVID and like we're feeling it out. And now it's going to it's the gold rush. But that's what you're trying to do. You need the content to build the brand, to bring in people, and then you're going to sell them something. So it's like, that's almost more important. I mean, obviously your product and service have to be on point and you have to service your customers. I think that is a critical component of a business, obviously, but you got to think of yourself as a mini media company. Otherwise, it's going to be hard to be around. So I think it's worth building this skill set is my point. One other thing I want to add on there that I forgot who said it, but I think for me, one key to what makes a content creator really great is being obsessively focused on the end consumer or the audience. So when I think about things, people are like, oh, how'd you come up with that? Or how'd you know to phrase it like that? I just obsessively only think about how my audience would interpret this. Like I never for once think, oh, I need my logo. I need to like introduce myself. I need to like talk about my company at the end. Like it literally doesn't even register in my mind. I only think about like, how can I make this the most impactful video that I've ever made? In the same way I am with my customers, which some of you guys are in here now. I'm thinking about how can I service them better? Do I need to get on calls? Do I need to do this? Do I need analytics? Do I need to, how can I make the experience better? And that's, if you look at Amazon and some of these other companies, like that's what they've done. They've obsessively focused over their audience. And I think that's what every great content creator does. If I just take your own self-interest out of it and only focus on like, I want to bring maximum value to the people that I'm going to speak to.